Hello and welcome to the Bucket Lister podcast. Join your host Keith Crockford along with special guests who have travelled the world, here to share stories of their adventures and plenty of inspo to add to your bucket list. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. And today we are going back and chatting with someone who we talked to a few months ago when we chatted with Emma Denley. So hello Emma.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm not very well actually. It's raining outside and I've just come back from a lovely week in Gozo, as you know. And now I'm having sort of not really enjoying myself back in the UK when I could be out in sunny Gozo scuba diving.
I know, and just a week ago we were sat in the sun, having finished a day of diving. I'm missing it already.
Yeah, so obviously that gives you a bit of a brief introduction as to what we're going to be discussing on today's podcast. So this week, on all of our socials and everything, we are really talking about Gozo as a destination and scuba diving in general. And Gozo is one of those places that many people may not have heard of, and it's actually the little island just off Malta. And that's where we kind of base ourselves for our scuba diving trip. So Emma came along on the trip last week and I thought, what a great opportunity to have somebody else rather than listening to me talk about diving. Bear in mind, Emma joined us as a newbie diver, having never dived before. Well, you had dived before, but you'd never qualified, did you?
Yes, exactly. So I've done one or two dives a couple of years ago now, just sort of beginner try dives that you can kind of book onto, that sort of thing. I'd never done anything yet to qualify or get a certificate or anything like that. So this is my first proper intense diving course.
Intense. That word came up a few times in the week, didn't it?
A little bit. No, I think it's just because it is such a short amount of time, you've got a lot to fit in those 3 days that we did the course in. So I guess intense was a word that we used to describe it, purely because there's so much to learn and so much to understand. I think what the best thing that I found about it was that a lot of the theory, I know that when I've spoken to people about doing different certificates, be it like a PADI or anything like that before, there's so much theory and you're sat in a classroom doing it the whole time. So it becomes almost like a week course in itself. Whereas with the SSI course that we did, which is just another kind of brand of diving certificate, all kind of the same qualification, it's all on an app now. So all the theory you could do in advance. People were doing it on the plane on the day before we started diving. You could do it a week or two before you even traveled. So it definitely meant that you had almost the understanding beforehand. And then when you got to Gozo and we started doing the course, you could really just do the practical stuff and get stuck in with the diving.
Yeah, and I mean, Malta's super easy to get to, isn't it? Malta's 3-hour flight from the UK. And then to get to Gozo, it's kind of a 30-minute transfer on a bus to the ferry port and then a 20-minute ferry, and then you're in Gozo. How would you describe the difference between Malta and Gozo in general for anyone that's never been to Gozo before?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. So we didn't go to Malta on this trip as such, other than flying in and out, but I have been to Malta previously. I just love Gozo. I can't get enough of Gozo. I think it's just the size of it. It's much smaller, so it's super easy to get around in a day. You can basically, I would say, see the whole island. It's still touristy. I think what was nice about this trip was we were there in October, so obviously it's just nowhere near as busy as you'd see it in kind of July and August time. But Malta, obviously, understandably, as a bigger island and much more well known, is much busier with tourists. Gozo, I think it is just more unspoiled as well. It has all the incredible kind of coves and beaches, and obviously that's where the scuba diving kind of is based as well. I haven't really heard of scuba diving on Malta. I think everyone seems to go to Gozo for it, purely because of the marine life you see, the rock formations, the coasts, there's shipwrecks so you can dive down to, all that sort of thing. So I think Gozo definitely has the best of scuba diving if that's what you're into. And just a lot of everything. It's got great food. It's got, the people are really nice. As I said, it's super easy to get around. Amazing weather. Even at the end of October, we're sat outside in bikinis and t-shirts. It's 28 degrees. So it's an amazing place. And I think also the thing is that people don't really realize that you can scuba dive in Europe. It seems like you've got to go to Thailand or Bali or Australia or something like that to do your scuba diving, whereas actually we're super lucky in the UK that we do have amazing scuba diving only 3 hours from us.
Yeah, I mean, it's super easy in that respect to actually go there, and it's just a lovely destination, I think. And I mean, we base our trips in Schlendi, and I think that's, there's not a lot in Schlendi really, is there, apart from restaurants, a few dive centres and some hotels, and that's pretty much about it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's all you really need. It's got a nice kind of bay. The sunset there is just incredible. And yeah, it's a popular spot, I think, with locals as well, because the water is really nice there. So that's the thing about Gozo. There's not actually really many sandy beaches. I think there's just the one that we went to, Ramla Bay. Other than that, it does just seem to be sort of either rocky, pebbly beaches or actually just rocks. And so there's lots of kind of steps to get in, or diving boards or whatever, people just jumping off the rocks, which I think is really fun. And the water is just crazy. It's so, so clear. I think that's, what we definitely, I guess, you notice when you're swimming or snorkeling or diving, whatever it is, just how amazingly crystal clear the water is.
Yeah, I mean, it is a diving mecca in terms of that, isn't it? And I think it's one reason why we base ourselves there. I mean, I love Schlendi. I've been going to Schlendi for 20 years now. Schlendi has everything. I mean, where we base ourselves, I mean, do you want to just describe where we were based for the week, like the facilities we had there?
Yes. So the hotel that we stayed in is linked to the dive center, dive shop as well. So it's super, super convenient. It's about 1 minute walk from the sea, the Schlendi Bay area. So it's so amazing because you don't need to obviously get any transport anywhere. You can just walk everything on foot, as I said, within a minute. And yeah, it's a great hotel, which I know that they are renovating and kind of extending for next year. So it's going to be even better with a rooftop pool and all that sort of stuff, which is very exciting. It has a great sort of bar, restaurant area on the ground floor. So that's where we'd breakfast obviously included anyway in the trips. We'd have breakfast there every morning, if you could stomach it before a dive. And then everyone would kind of take a break from diving and stop there for lunch as well. I know people who had dinner there as well. We had a few drinks. They do live music. So it was a really amazing spot. And yes, and the dive center is attached kind of as part of the ground floor and the basement as well. So they've got a big center there with a swimming pool. So you can kind of do some of the diving skills that you need to learn in the swimming pool. A classroom if you're doing extra theory. I know that kind of advanced people were doing theory in the classroom. And then everything the sea was in 1 minute walk. So if we wanted to kind of do some initial dives in that first little Schlendi area, or just go for a swim in the afternoon or whatever, you could just walk to the sea in 1 minute. And I think also that's what's nice about Gozo for me in diving, was that a lot of the dives are all kind of accessed by the land rather than having to go out on a boat. Like, again, I've always had to do when I'm doing tri dives, and you hear a lot of people having to get boats out to go and do the different dive sites that are famous, whereas on Gozo most of them are just accessed on foot, and then you kind of get into the water and just go, which I think particularly as a beginner is really, really nice. It just makes everything seem a little bit more accessible. So I really like that.
Yeah, and that is the lovely thing about Gozo is, I mean, Gozo's kind of 9 miles by 3 miles in terms of its size. So if it is a little bit windy and a little bit choppy on one side of the island, you can just jump in the dive trucks, head to the other side of the island, and everything will be calmer, and you've always got somewhere where you can go diving to. So it's just perfect like that in that respect.
Yeah, exactly. And because it is such a small island, it seems like everyone knows each other, be it the dive instructors or just locals in general, restaurant owners, all those sort of things. So it just has a really nice feel as a place in general. I'd definitely happily go back over and over.
And I think that was interesting with the trip that we had, wasn't it? Because we did have some people who came out on the trip not to do the scuba diving as well, because they came out with their partners, diving didn't float their boat, and they just decided that actually I just want to go and have a wander around and explore the island.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's it. As much as it's known for its scuba diving, it's also got just incredible scenery. As we were saying, there's plenty of things to go and see, different bays to walk around, kind of cliffs to climb, loads and things. I know some people were talking about mountain biking. I found it shocking that actually for such a small island, like you said, however many miles it is, I think I looked up actually 67 square kilometers. It has a hop on, hop off bus, which to me, I just couldn't get over. I mean, I live near London. I just always think big cities like this have hop on, hop off buses, but Gozo, as tiny of an island as it has a hop on, hop off bus going around all throughout the day. 2 different tour companies, actually. I saw 2 different style of buses.
Yeah,
There are plenty of things to be seeing on your hop on, hop off bus.
And even the main hop on, hop off bus has got 2 completely separate routes. There's multiple buses going around all the time around the island.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's just so many nice bays and beaches and coves and different things like that to see. So it's a good way, I suppose, to get around and see the island in a day. So yeah, it's nice that you didn't have to scuba dive. And I think, again, it's something we've spoken about. I know people on the trip also enjoyed it. Even if you were doing the scuba diving course, that was only 3 days of the 7 that we were there. And then it was optional to do extra dives or do your advanced course. So it was very, very flexible. And you basically had the opportunity to dive as much as you want, to dive as little as you want, and just, enjoy your time on the island as well.
So talk people through then, so you went out and did your open water course, that once you've qualified for that, you can use that anywhere around the world, and it allows you to dive to 18 meters. So if you're going on holiday to Thailand or you're going on holiday to somewhere else, you've got that qualification, you can take it with you. Just talk people through actually what the open water course actually entailed for you.
Yeah, of course. So it was spread out over 3 days. We had our first day on Gozo, we just had kind of a chill day, which was really, really nice, just to get settled and get to know everyone in the groups. Then the open water course was the following 3 days. We were all put into smaller groups. There was 14 of us on the trip. So we all kind of broke down smaller groups of those who wanted to diving. And each group had an instructor. So you got some really good kind of quality time with your instructor, which was really great. And as I spoke about briefly on the theory, we'd already done certain sections of the theory on the app, and you had to do little mini quizzes to check that you'd actually done it. They were just nice multiple choice sort of ones, and you just did those and moved on to the next section on the app. And then the actual course itself involved learning certain skills underwater. So a lot of the groups started doing that in the pool just for ease. Kind of the pool was 1 meter to 3 meters. So it was just kind of easy to learn some skills in there, to do with kind of the breathing, taking off your mask, different hand signals that you need underwater, all the kind of things you might expect that you would have to learn scuba diving. And then we went to the sea. So what we started in Schlendi Bay, our group did anyway, doing a couple of intro dives, because it's a bit more shallow there. And then throughout the next so that was maybe the first day and a half. Then throughout the next day and a half, we just did more dives. So some of our dives went down to 18 meters. We practiced a few more skills with our instructor, Julian. And then we just had a good time as well, just kind of exploring the Gozo underwater life, I suppose. We all had a kind of buddy, so you'd make sure you're with your buddy at all times to check your equipment and swim next to each other so you were okay underwater and everyone had enough air and all of that sort of stuff. And then also you had to do 1 multiple choice test of 50 questions. I think you needed to make sure you passed on 80% or something like that. It was all just stuff that you'd learn in the theory on the SSI app. Come
on then, Emma, what was your score on the test?
I think I got 96%.
Very good.
I know. I was happy with that. I think they do give you a couple tries, so don't worry if you're not going to pass first time. There's a number of tries involved, so it's nothing that should scare anyone off, I don't think. Even if we were all a bit nervous, I don't think it's the one thing that people fail on. And basically that was it. You have to do 4 open water dives, I think, to count in total. And then now we can go. Obviously I wouldn't go out diving by myself. You still need to go with a certain level qualified person, but it just gives you the opportunity to go down to a much deeper depth than I could on just an intro dive, and take more responsibility for my own diving. And I think for me in particular, you know this as well, I was just feeling more confident in the water that I didn't have before. I definitely took from it as well.
Yeah, because we had this conversation whilst we were in Gozo, because you were kind of like, you had done your course, and it, as you said, it is quite intense. And then you were like, I think I'm done with diving now. Like, I think I'm quite happy now just to chill out and explore the island, etc., etc. And I remember saying to you, look, just come out and go diving, because it's like, I think diving's a bit like learning to drive, in the sense of like when you're sat there with an instructor, you don't, yes, you learn the skills, but you don't actually really learn to drive until you get out there on your own in a car and go driving. And we actually went out a couple of times doing some fun dives in the following days. And how do you think you sort of that improved your diving in that sense?
Yeah, 1,000%. Because as much as I already knew how to dive by that point, that's the point of the course, isn't it? The 3 days you learn how to really dive and do all the equipment. And I learned so much in those 3 days. I think that's where I also say it's intense, because you just learn so much. And that's the thing. I think I didn't expect to learn as much as I did, in a good way. I think it's obviously was able to take in a lot and learn a lot about diving. The following couple of days where we went out diving again, and you just got a bit more confident and comfortable with the things that we had to do. You didn't have to think about particular skills, but just, as you're saying, right, with driving, things just start to come a bit more naturally. So you stop thinking about your breathing, because you just breathe anyway, and start to actually enjoy the fish that you're seeing, or different things like that, or trying to work on your buoyancy a bit better. And for me, trying to stay horizontal rather than walking in the water. So yeah, it definitely helped getting out a bit more. And I think for me, I found that we went to a dive site one time, and I went to a dive site that I'd been to already. So again, you know a little bit more what to expect. So I think that helped as well, that you can, again, just settle into something and feel more confident with them.
Yeah, and then obviously we always try, if we can, as a company, to organise a boat trip on the final day to go, and we had a few people that were quite happily snorkeling on the boat trip, and then we had a few people that actually decided, they wanted to go diving. Just talk people through that boat trip a bit.
Yeah, so like you said, it was really nice to do because everyone could come on it. It didn't matter what you had decided to do that day. So we did it on our last day, I suppose, because we flew home super late on the next day. So you obviously need to leave enough time between diving and flying. It was our last full day. And yeah, so our whole group went on it, which was really nice. I'd say probably 75% then dived. 60%.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, something like that.
I mean, a few people obviously weren't doing any diving from the outset, and a few other people just had decided that they'd done enough diving, or different reasons. It is, as we said, it's quite a lot to do in the week. So different people, different reasons. So yeah, so the first dive we did on that was a wreck dive, which was so cool. I'd never done anything like that before. So there was a boat. I don't know anything about it. You probably maybe do know more than me, but a boat on the seabed. And
it's generally what a wreck is, Emma. Well done. Like that's.
Yeah, but did you know? I don't know if you know any details about the actual ship itself that you're going to wow everyone with.
Not on this podcast. We dived the P-31.
But I thought that was really cool. It's a popular spot on Gozo, so there were other divers around, but a few different groups from our boat went down, and you got to kind of swim through the ship and explore a little bit. So that was really cool. It was very, very different. And so yes, that was one you could do. And then the other dive you could do that day was a cavern dive. So kind of swimming through a cave almost, but kind of as a cave tunnel, starting one side and going through to the other. And then we also got to see a little bit of Camino Island, the Blue Lagoon, which is obviously one of the most famous things to do in Malta and Gozo. It's kind of smack bang in the middle of the two of them. So we got to see the Blue Lagoon. And it was just a really nice day out to have as a group. I think, again, as a trip with the bucket list company, it's always so nice to hang out as a group because you get some great people on there. But with this being so busy with the diving and people split into smaller groups for the diving, it was nice to do something all together. I think everyone really, really enjoyed that.
And what would you say about the group dynamic and the age on the trip then? Because it was quite diverse, wasn't it?
Quite. Yeah, definitely more diverse than I thought. I think there was a complete mix of ages from sort of early 20s to 60s, and some couples, people traveling by themselves, one family. So yeah, completely diverse. I mean, I guess you never know what to expect, but for something like this, I really didn't know what to expect, because diving obviously is very varied. And I think that's what I even noticed, that just with the diving of other people that you'd see out on dives, it's such a diverse thing, because once people, I think, get hooked on diving, you're just hooked. It doesn't really matter on your age. People just love diving. And I think, again, like we said, you don't have to come and dive either. So people did have the option to come and not necessarily want to do loads and loads of activity. And it's still just a nice trip to have and enjoy some sun on Gozo.
I think the interesting thing really was that actually, if you look at all of the solo travelers that were on the trip, there was more female solo travelers than there were male solo travelers.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, overall it was just females in general, I suppose, in our group. Yeah.
I think it's a perfect trip for female solo travelers, isn't it? Because it's 100% safe. Like Slendy and Gozo is such a safe place to be. You can wander around by yourself. You can go out with a group. Like at no point are you feeling worried as a solo traveler, are you?
No, never. I think that's the thing. Yeah, as you said, it just feels like a very, very safe area, both in Slendy and Gozo as a whole. As with kind of any bucket list trip, we had a WhatsApp group, so people would always message on that asking if anyone wanted to go for dinner. So no one's really ever eating by themselves anyway, unless they particularly wanted to read a book or whatever it might be. There was always someone to go out for dinner with or to go shopping with or whatever you might want to do. And it worked really well actually with the hotel and the bar being downstairs. People would kind of just end up congregating downstairs around the happy hour time. Happy hour. But people would be there for happy hour or just around then, and eventually there'd be a group to go for dinner. So you never really had to spend any time by yourself anyway. And I think particularly because it is European and it's only 3 hours away, and actually just the amount of British influence obviously that there is in Malta in general, it feels very familiar. So it definitely doesn't ever feel scary. And everyone speaks English. So again, it's a very, very easy place to spend time, particularly as a female solo traveler.
Yeah, so if you're a solo traveler, then this, and you want to learn to scuba dive, obviously, then this could be the perfect trip for you, really. I mean, in terms of the trip itself, I mean, it's an 8-day trip. Like I say, we include 3 days worth of diving within the trip, and that could be at whatever level you're at. So if you are never dived before, then you're going to do your open water course. If you have already done your open water course, then you can go and do your advanced course. If you've already done both of those and you actually just want to go fun diving, then, which is what I did every day, was whilst I was waiting for everyone to finish their open waters, is I just, jumped in the water and went out and went diving, which was amazing. And then we've generally got kind of 2 days at the end of the trip then, where if people want to continue their diving, or as we had a couple of people on this trip jump straight on to doing their advanced course. And I do think actually it's a really good idea to, if you're not too tired from the original course, to actually go and do your advanced straight away. Because, if you were to go on the trip in a year's time, you're going to need to refresh those skills that you've learned before you then go and do your advanced. So, to do them back to back is a great way of doing it. I mean, in terms of our trips moving forward, I mean, it was something we discussed while we were away in Gozo. And I think, actually, we always advertised the Gozo trip as a scuba diving trip. And I think from the conversations that I had with people in the group last week, we're probably going to change that a little bit and actually have a more of a Gozo trip that actually is priced as such, and then have the diving in it, so you can kind of add it on to the trip. Because we did have people who, just went out there to go walking and explore the island and things like that. And I think it really does suit itself to be that sort of trip. And if you want to learn to dive, then great. But if you don't want, Gozo, I think, still has so much more to offer, don't you think, Emma?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think particularly as you kind of said before, that there were some people who had come almost as a couple and only one wanted to dive and one didn't. So initially maybe they'd have thought, oh no, we can't do that trip, we'll have to do something different. Whereas actually they'll just open it up to more people who, not everyone wants to learn to dive, and that's completely fine. But there is so much to see on Gozo. And then it works the same for solo travelers, because sometimes, again, it's a really cool place to do a group trip. Like we said, then you get to hang out with different people for dinner and all those sort of things. So yeah, I think it really, really works. And we haven't really touched on, but the big kind of main city on the island, Victoria, right in the middle. So kind of all the roads lead through Victoria. And there's a big kind of citadel there. So there's loads of actual sightseeing to do as well, not just sort of outdoorsy stuff. You kind of walk around the citadel, there's markets there, lots of different things to see as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is just I think the island's got everything. And like you say, it's just such a short commute from the UK, to get the weather, to get the lovely scenery, to get the amazing sea. I think it just ticks all the boxes for a lot of people, really.
Yeah, completely. And even if you are, I know a couple of people, they went to Malta for the day as well. It's still a super easy thing to do it that way. I think people probably often think, oh, we'll go stay on Malta and we'll go to Gozo for the day. Whereas I'd 100% say do the other way around, stay on Gozo, go to Malta for the day. As you said, it's a 40 minute ferry to Malta. You can go into Valletta for the day, have some lunch, and then still head back to Gozo again. I think that's definitely the better way around to do it, my personal opinion.
Yeah, well, they've now even got the quick ferry that goes straight from Gozo straight into Valletta itself now. So there is actually, so you've got the passenger ferry that goes back to Malta, but you've also got the quicker ferry then that then goes straight into the middle of Valletta. So you could go and take that one. Just touch on the food a little bit, Emma. I know you like your food. What's the food like over there?
Oh, the food is so good. When I first went to Malta, I just didn't know what to expect with the food. I didn't know what their sort of cuisine was or anything like that. But I've honestly always been so impressed with the food. So it's very, I would say, Italian influenced. There is a lot of pizza and pasta, but obviously being a small island, so much fresh fish and seafood and yeah, just amazing, amazing fish. So even if you're having pastas, it's shellfish pasta. That's difficult to say. Shellfish pasta. But yeah, the food is just amazing. Ice creams. What else do I like there? I don't know. The food is all great. And there's just lots of different restaurant options as well. You're never short on where to go to. I know you're a fan of the Indian restaurant there. It's
a very good Indian restaurant. I mean, I know you don't go to Gozo for their Indian cuisine, but it is a very good Indian restaurant, and I do frequent it a couple of times when I'm normally over there.
No, it was good. I enjoyed it too.
So in terms of the trip itself, what would you advise people if they're thinking about, oh, I quite like to learn to scuba dive, but I don't know if it's too much for me? What would you say to those people?
I would say just do it purely because I think, yes, it could be, I'm not saying it's an easy thing, 3 days of diving, but it's 100% worth it. It's so rewarding once you actually complete it. I found also what I was going to say earlier, it's just really nice that it was something so bonding with the group because we're all kind of going through it and different people had different things they struggled with, whether it be their buoyancy and kind of floating to the top or their air consumption or whatever it might be. So I really found like everyone did work well together as a team, and it was just so nice and bonding that you wouldn't necessarily maybe have on any trip because we're all kind of going through something together. So I did really, really like that. You do love it. Once you get used to it and you're down there, it's just amazing of stuff you get to see and experiences. It's so worth it. But also, obviously, once you get out there, you don't have to dive all the time as well. So I think it's so nice to have that flexibility that we've spoken about and how you can just see Gozo as well. So I 100% think it's worth a trip regardless. And
if you're a traveler, like you do a lot of traveling, like having that ticket in your wallet or on the app now, is it, I'm an old school diver. I've still got the plastic card. I haven't got an app. But if you've got the app, wherever you go in the world, you can just go diving. And I think, if you do enjoy traveling, then actually having that ticket to allow you to go and do stuff is super important.
Yeah, I completely agree. Because that's the thing, you go to so many amazing places where diving is an option, but if you've not got your certificate, you maybe even can't do it at all, or you have to go somewhere super shallow and do all the kind of basics. So it definitely just gives you so much more flexibility and so much more opportunity to see some really cool things and just use the skills. And as I said already, that you just feel so much more confident doing it as well. So I'm excited to hopefully get back in the water soon and practice so I don't lose the things I've learned already.
And that's the thing. Once you have qualified, whenever you go to another dive centre or anywhere else in the world, they'll ask you when you last dived. And if you haven't dived for 6 months, then you might have to do a little refresher with them just before you go out diving. But that's not a big thing. It's, just a quick dive just to show that you can remember everything that you should know, really. So, don't think, well, I'm only going to dive once a year when I'm on holiday. because, it's not a big thing to go and do a refresher at the end of the day.
No, exactly. And I think also it's so nice having the app because it does give you, obviously, I think I haven't actually looked, but I'm sure the theory is still there, accessible to you to just go and read through again. And also we logged all the dives that we did. So I can now look back and see, and this day we did this dive, we went to this depth, it was at this location. And it goes into the specifics of even saying, these are the fish we saw, or we saw X, Y, Z, that you can put in any detail you want. So it's really, really nice just actually as a logbook as well to see what you've been doing and the dives that you've done to look back on too, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, and I think the fact that it's on your phone, you're more inclined to, if you go to Thailand and you do 2 dives, you're probably more inclined just to log those 2 dives because it's there on your phone and you're going to do it. So I think it's much easier now, and it's one reason why we've moved away from, we always used to offer the PADI open water courses, and that was done with a logbook and video teaching, and it was a 4-day course, and you pretty much spend 2 of those days in a classroom doing all the theory and watching the videos and everything. And I think the SSI way of doing it now is so much better in terms of actually just physically getting out there and going diving. You've paid that money. You're in a lovely warm country and you're stuck in a classroom.
Yeah, no one wants that. And that's the thing. Everyone has only ever really heard of PADI. Everyone you're getting your PADI, it seems. That's what people kind of refer to it as. Was actually no, everyone's getting that open water. PADI is just one company that offer that, and SSI is another. So we're coming out with the same certificate or qualification, whatever you want to call it, that you would do when you're getting your PADI, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, there are multiple agencies that offer diving courses. So you've got PADI, you've got SSI, you've got RAGE, you've got BSAC in the UK, and these qualifications are all recognised worldwide. So if you ever do go to a dive centre and they say, and in your head you've got, I need to do a PADI open water course, and they're not offering that, then don't let that put you off, because an SSI qualification or a RAID qualification or one of the other ones is still recognised throughout the world, and you can still use it if you turn up to Thailand or the Maldives or wherever you go. So don't let that put you off.
Yeah.
Well, Emma, it's been a pleasure talking to you as always. Thank you ever so much again for coming on the Gozo trip with us and experiencing it. And I know you've said that potentially you're gonna head back on another Gozo trip in the future.
Yeah, I like the sound of that rooftop pool that's being built.
You were supposed to say, I can't wait to go back and go diving, to be honest. That's the bit
I've already said I am looking forward to more diving for sure.
Brilliant. Well, thanks ever so much, Emma. And I'm sure we'll hear you on the podcast in the future. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Hope you've enjoyed today's episode. And if you are interested in having a look at our Gozo trip, then I will put a link to the website in the show notes for this podcast, and you can head over and see what the trip's all about. But, it's such a great trip. It's really good value for the money, considering it does include the open water course as well. So actually, when you look at the cost of the trip, and one thing we are going to do, like I said, is split those costs out. We haven't quite done that yet, but we will be doing that in the future. So if you don't want to scuba dive, then you can still sign up and head to Gozo. Again, thanks ever so much for listening. I'll speak to you next week. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. Be sure to click follow to be alerted for next week's episode. For more travel inspiration, check us out at www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk or follow us on socials. See you next time.